exciting news. Flew with an individual, it was about a month ago, and he just had such an amazing story to tell about his journey in aviation. And I said, "Man, you've got to let me have you on the show and talk about your journey." And he graciously agreed. Our next guest started out in aviation at birth, born into an aviation family of historic proportions. At 6 months old, he recounts a story of his first aviation experience flying in the back of an airplane while on board with the entire Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. That must have been just an eye-opening experience, if you know what I mean. Later, a Discovery flight at 13 years old launched his career. After an aviation program at the University of Oklahoma, he joined the U.S. Air Force, where he flew the KC-135s. He later followed his mother's footsteps and joined the Legacy family at Legacy Airlines, where he has type ratings in the 75, 76, and the Airbus A320 family of aircraft. Please help us in welcoming to the show Captain Rob Cosand. Rob, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, Tony. How's everything on your end?
Doing well. Flew into a pretty good trip here. It's a 4-day, actually a 5-day if you count the red eye I'm going to be doing later on tonight back in LA. But did a nice trip. Everything's been good. High time, a lot of flying.
Nice.
It wasn't one leg in Hawaii. It was two. We started in Phoenix, ended up in LA, had a 2.5-hour sit, dealt with, all the typical airplane write-up stuff that needed to be taken care of, and then flew out to Maui last night.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, the temperature is perfect. It's not crowded. The airplane had 120 open seats on it, which was eye-opening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we made some pretty good time.
Season.
Yeah, we dealt with those winds that Roger was talking about, though. I mean, it was a pretty long flight, 5.5 hours from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
That was long. So, and you've been flying quite a bit yourself. How's your schedule been?
That's mostly on short call reserve, but a lot of the transcons going out to the Northeast because the senior guys take a look at the weather as you do and they go, "I'm not flying today." So it's definitely one of those. I get my challenges put in, and some pretty good stories to definitely tell over some beverages at the end of a flight of what's been happening on with the weather, essentially. I mean, like I said, 'tis the season for wintertime operations, and that brings along its challenges as well as its rewards. So it's been a lot of fun. Can't dream of doing anything other than that. But it's definitely something to hang your hat on when you get home and set foot in your house and call it a day and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this profession, isn't it? You show up to work with a knowledge base. I often equate the skill of professional flying to learning languages. You learn the language of your regulations, you learn the language of aerodynamics, you learn the language of your standard operating procedures for your company, you learn the language of the weather systems, and you learn all these languages. And then once you get proficient in all of them, you show up, you do your job, you get a story to tell at the end of the day, and when you go home, that's it. You're pretty much done.
Yep. And
okay, so I got to butt in here to make fun of you airline guys, because this is my role on the show. that is not all true for all of us. And not all of us just go home and kick our feet up and drink coffee and beer. Okay. Now I'm going to let this conversation continue right here. But my role in this show is to at least point out the fact that not everybody has this cush life. I'm going to put my microphone back on mute and stew over here in silence. Carry on.
Very nice.
Those that can't see Roger, he's dead serious here. But Rob, thank you so much for joining us on the show, and thank you for your service as well.
Oh, it was a pleasure to do so. It was a lot of good came of it. It got me to where I was ending up wanting to be, but at the same time, being able to serve, being willing and able to do so was a pleasure to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Now, growing up, you were telling me a little bit about your family history, and I can remember sitting there on the flight deck. We were flying along, and I'm just kind of like, "You're kidding me!" And here you were pulling up pictures of old photos, and I was just so amazed. Now, in the intro, I said that you were born into an aviation family? What can you tell me about that?
My mom, she was a part of the very first class of women pilots that was allowed in the United States Air Force back in They started in class 1978, class 4 at the Williams Air Force Base in Arizona. Before that, even getting to being able to be a pilot, she had to join the Air Force and ended up as a maintenance officer, awaiting to go to training. And she just would not stop when she heard about this pilot program, or I say pilot program as initial, because it was the very first one, but a initial pilot program for women pilots. She was the youngest one, and she was the only reservist in her class. And that's she got through the training. She met my dad at pilot training. She was a reservist. My dad was active duty. They got married and enjoyed the dual income, no kids life for a couple of years. And then I showed up. And then and the very, very interesting thing was I would like to have said that my aviation story would have began before birth, but because my mom was the very first female pilot who was pregnant, they actually grounded her because they didn't know the effects of flying in military aircraft while pregnant. Mm. Regulations changed a few years later while my sister was being grown, and she was actually able to fly up until her third trimester. So my sister's story actually began before birth.
Ah, nice.
So it's definitely one of those, the unknown at the time. So had to wait a few months before I took my first flight as a newborn. But we were traveling, and I guess like the intro said, we were flying from Dallas to Kansas City, and the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders were on board. And my mom tells me the story every time of, oh, just rosy cheeks and red lipstick painted all over your face from all the kisses you were getting, and you'll never live this down. I go, I wish I could remember.
Oh man, lucky.
Yeah.
And this is at a time when, the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders were like the elite cheerleading squad in the nation. There was no other. Nothing to compare to. Yeah, that's a fantastic story, and thank you for sharing that with us. Now, obviously, being in an aviation family, having both parents as aviators in our armed services, how was that any different than any other aviation family that might be a civilian family? Was it a big adjustment as kids?
I would definitely say with my dad being active duty, and we were living along all the military installations, we were kind of insulated from anything other than what we had, because both of our parents or pretty much all the kids in the neighborhood, parents were doing the same thing. It's just both of mine were doing it at the same time. So it really wasn't anything out of the ordinary when a dad or even a mom would go, all right, I got a 2-week trip, or I'm deploying out to this location, or all that we knew was they'd be gone, and they'd come home with a suitcase full of presents and gummy bears if they went to Germany, and ask them when's the next trip.
So really not much different than a child from an aviation airline family. It's
yeah,
same
pretty much the same. Especially growing up as a younger, you don't really conceptualize what your parents are actually doing. Once you get a little bit older and kind of understanding what's going on in the world, then you kind of get an idea of, oh, my dad or my mom is doing this, and you go, that's really cool. And then for me, that kind of really cemented the seed of, I wanted to do the military route because I saw what mom and dad did throughout the country and the world. That'd definitely be something that I'd like to put my talents to good use for.
Yeah. Now, how was school? You mentioned that you were on bases and.
Oh yeah. I'll go through the litany of where I lived to include ending up here. I was born in New Jersey, lived there for 3 months. Then we moved to Altus, Oklahoma, southwest corner. Lived there for about 5 years. Then we went up to Fort Leavenworth for my dad to do a joint assignment with the Army. Then we moved over to Monterey, California for him to do language school to learn Spanish. That's when I first started first grade at the time. So I was in first grade for a year. Then we moved to Tegucigalpa, Honduras. Lived there for 2 years. My dad was working at the embassy there. Then we did Alabama for another professional schooling. Then Scott Air Force Base, Illinois, Did that for 3 years. Left when I was in seventh grade at that point. Then moved over back to New Jersey. Did 7th or 8th, 9th, and 10th grade. 11th grade was in Virginia. Then I actually graduated with kids that I went to school with in the 5th grade back in Illinois, and then went off to school in Oklahoma, and then started my Air Force journey back to Alabama, then to Texas for pilot training, then out to Oklahoma for KC-135 school, and ended up in my base in northern Indiana at Grissom Air Reserve Base, at which point did a lot of deployments there and got onto Legacy Airlines. Moved to Miami, and up until recently, about a year and a half ago, made the move out to Southern California.
So what you're telling me is you have commitment issues.
Yes. Longest place I've ever lived anywhere was 6 years, and that was Miami.
Wow. Well, what a journey. I mean, and that's, I'm sure there's so much more to talk about in terms of where you've lived, the experiences you've shared with your family and schoolmates from around the world, really. I mean, would I be wrong in saying that all those experiences really do give you the tools to quickly join in a group, in an experience, and kind of fit in?
100 or perfect with the explanation. They give you the tools. It requires the self-determination to utilize those tools to then want to continue with what you want to do, make friends where you can. Nothing wrong with not utilizing what you have and just want to do your own thing, but being given the tools and using them creates lifelong friendships, to the point of social media is one of those extraordinary things, especially kind of with the geolocating of, hey, this guy's near you. And I go, I haven't seen him in 10 years. And we're in Des Moines, Iowa, of all places, on a trip from something, or a great story of I'm in Brazil and there's a guy that I went to college with, and I was like, what are you doing here?
Wow.
I mean, you meet up people the most random places, and
yeah.
I don't want to say it sucks to the point of you have to kind of change your day up a little bit, but it's definitely for the better, and you create the lifelong memories and really cement those friendships.
That's interesting. So you're using social media and the technology that it comes with in order to discover moments where it's a memory that is cherished, but through the social media tool. And that's something you don't hear every day. Most people go, "Oh, put your phone away, be in the moment." Well, yeah, but you're using the media to discover these moments that wouldn't be there. You would have never known that your buddy was on that layover in Des Moines or wherever it is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a refreshing thing to hear.
It is. I mean, you can spend hours upon hours on it and peruse, or you can use it to a different way, which is the way I kind of I model my social media experience of. I kind of utilize it to see what's going on. I'll take a look at who's posted, but definitely where they're posted, and go, hey, you still there?
Yeah.
And we definitely
that is really cool. Now, we mentioned that you had your discovery flight at the age of 13. Was that something that you were pushing for, or was it something your family was just saying, hey, you want to go up? We'll pay for a discovery flight?
It was a family event at McGuire Air Force Base out there in New Jersey. And I told my dad, I want to do it. And he goes, all right, let's sign you up. And on a Saturday when there was no military jets flying, we were doing touch and goes in a Cessna 172 through the Aero Club right there at the base, and flew over the house and really cemented the bug at that point.
Yeah. Now, were you able to see over the glare shield?
No.
Some people, we talk about that, and we used to have these things called phone books. If any listeners out there are like, what's a phone book? They're these really thick books of everybody's phone number that lives in your area, and the businesses. And we used to stack them up for the kids, but then they couldn't reach the pedals, which probably couldn't reach the pedals anyway. So, but yeah, I remember that looking over the glare shield was always a challenge.
It was mostly horizontal views is what really got me.
Yeah. Now, you said that cemented the the bug, was it something that you started right away with, or did that motivate you to keep up the grades and move forward?
It definitely did. Being in the position with the family, being able to see military aircraft at air shows and having access to it on the weekends, my dad would take us to the airplane, and we'd sit in the cockpit, and he'd do the annunciator test, and we'd look at all the lights, do a fire bottle test, and hear all the bells and whistles of the airplane. And as a little kid, definitely, oh, that's really, really cool. And they never once really pushed me towards that lifestyle, but it was just something that definitely wanted to be a part of. And once getting behind the controls, really, really put it into perspective.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, did your sister also? You had mentioned your sister. Did she follow in the family legacy footsteps as well? Was she enamored also?
Hers was a little different journey. She took it among more of if Big Brother can do it, I can do it. So
Sure.
she's about 4 years behind me. So right as my collegiate journey was ending and the military career was starting, she was just finishing high school and kind of going, I don't really know what I want to do. And seeing what I went through training wise and program wise, it interested her to pursue that career path.
So she's flying now as well?
She's also here at Legacy Airline, as well as flying for the Air Force Reserves out at Travis Air Force Base in Northern California. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, you both are flying for the same carrier. And was there a time where your mother was also flying for Legacy Airlines at the same time?
There was. She recently retired back in April of 2020, age 65. And it was a unique opportunity that 3 years prior to that we got crewed on the same aircraft to fly from Dallas to Keflavik, Iceland. So it really brings back some really good memories of our very first time flying together. Her initial Legacy airline experience was a flight from JFK to Cairo, Egypt, when I was in 8th grade and my sister was in 3rd grade.
Wow.
That she pulled me, my sister, and grandma, and we went from New York to Egypt. Sat there for 3 days while she did Egypt to Riyadh and back, and flew back. Her landing wasn't the greatest. As a snot-nosed kid, I go up to the cockpit, and this was all pre 9/11, going, Mom, that landing sucked. She's mad. Check airman, he's laughing. The other pilot's laughing. And she turns to me, and this was right around the time that I had my discovery flight. And she goes, just wait, you're going to have a landing like that. And I go, probably, but you won't be on board. So I kind of avoided it a little bit. And she was getting closer to the retirement age. And our airline decided to put a firm retirement date on the aircraft. So we really pushed through scheduling to try to make this flight happen. And it worked out. And I flew as the first officer. My mom was the relief pilot. And I'd like to say that was probably the best landing I've ever had in my life.
Now, you were telling me about this story when we flew together, and you said you had a little friendly competition about the landing, and the captain was kind of feeling like, oh, what the heck did I get myself into? What's going on here? What can you...
Yeah,
all about that.
The really cool thing was he's a great guy. Still, also, I still believe he's still flying for us as well. And just to cement the whole aviation as a small community, he was in my dad's squadron back in the 80s and was kind of looking at me going, I know you. And I go, yeah, I was that kid running up and down the halls of the squadron as a toddler. And he goes, and I remember him saying, God, I'm old. But
it is a small world. You know, we say that all the time.
Yeah. But we sat down, we introduced ourselves, and he goes, I know the name, and we go through the history and of who we were. And he goes, yeah, I know you guys. And we go, I'm sorry, Bob, but you're not getting a landing. I'm getting this. I'm taking us to Iceland. My mom's bringing us back, having a competition. And he goes, okay. So I proceeded to have the best landing of my life. And my mom definitely redeemed herself because she beat me.
Oh, so you had the best landing of your life, and she still
beat you.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Definitely one of those. The skill, like a fine aged wine, just gets better with time. And she showed me a thing or two towards the end of her career.
Wow.
Sit back, son. Let me show you how it's done.
Exactly.
And what did she have her thug dark glasses on afterwards?
She was wearing it. She pulled out her. She doesn't wear the cloth lanyard. She wears a little metallic lanyard with her little charms. She kind of took that out of her shirt and put it over the top and went, "That's right."
That's right.